Te heua mauri ora ki te whea au ki te ao marama. Pake au ki te tangi a te manu ma tui a i runga, tui a i rapa, tui a i roto, tui a i waho. Tui a te mukatanga te karongo te pō karongo te ao. Tui a te whenua, tui a te rangi, tui a ki te moana. Ua whio rangi pūtakataka. Te marama ahunuku, te marama ahurangi. A takoto koutu ki te wao, tū te wini, tū te wana, tū te hakapu tēnei ki te whei ao ki te ao marama. A takoto koutu ki te wao tū, tēnei ka tū atu, tēnei ka tū ko tāne mahuta, ko tāne wakapiripiri, ko tāne te wānanga nui arangi, ko tāne te nui o te ao katu. A whakaoti nuku ka whakaoti rangi. Ka tūnu mea ka tūrawea ka whakaoti nuku ka whakaoti rangi. Ka irihia, ka irihia. Ka takoto koutou i roto i tēnā. Turuturu atai, turuturu auta, turuturu whakamaua mai kia tīna, haumi e, ui e, tai ki e. E ngā iwi, e ngā reo, e ngā karangatanga maha o te motu, tēnā koutou, kia ora hui mai anō rā tātou. E tika ana kia mihi atu kia rātou, ngā mate huhua o te wā. Ngā mate o te pewhairangi, ngā mate o roto e kaipara moana. Ngā mate puta noa o ngā puhi nui tonu, te taitoke rau. Here koutou, here koutou, here. Here ki Hawaii ki nui, Hawaii ki roa, Hawaii ki pamamau. Te hono i wairua ki te whei au ki te ao marama. Hawaii ki whakamutu koutou i ngā whenga. Haere whakaoti atu. Orera e ngā iwi haere mai. Haere mai tēnei rā ki a Toi Ngāpuhi. Tēnei rā ka whakawhiti kōrero i roto i te ao toi. Orera haere mai, nau mai, whakatau mai rā. Welcome once again to the webinar series for Toi Ngāpuhi. And in a moment I'll pass over to Lau Hoskins and our guest for today and introduce the taumata kōrero kaupapa for this afternoon, this Sunday afternoon. I'd like to say as an introduction and welcome to everyone that Toi Ngāpuhi seeks to draw upon our relationships right across Ngāpuhi Nui Tonu and Te Taitokerau. We are a group of creatives who are heavily involved in our own communities right across Te Taitokerau and Ngāpuhi Nui Tonu. And today it is our pleasure to cross again to another part of our series of Taumata Kōrero in preparation for the Hui Taumata that we are expecting to hold at this time of the year in 2021. But for today, I'd like to hand over to our tuakana, Lau Hoskins, to introduce the speaker for today and also the kaupapa. Ōreira e ngā karangatanga maha o te motu, urihuri noa, tēnā koutou, kia ora hui mai anō rā tātou katoa. Ka tuku atu ki a koe e te tuakana e rau. And welcome to everyone that Toi Ngāpuhi.
Ngā mihi nui ki a koe, o tira ki a koutou katoa e whakarongo ana. Me hoki au ki a Bernard, nāna i whakarite tō tātou nei wāhanga i te ahiahi nei, tēnā koe. Kia koe, e te hoa, te rangatira, tēnā koe, nau mai ki tēnei taumata kōrero o Toi Ngāpuhi. Reira, tēnā koe. Phil, welcome. And let's look at some introductions here, and we're really keen to just get a sense of where you're from. No hea koe, kia ora mai.
Kia ora mai. tautako I te mihi, kua mihi a kia ki te kai tuwhera o tō tātou hui Bernard ngā mihi ki a koe. Koutou mā, nā iwi o tai taukerau kei te mihi ki a koutou. I rongi te tuanui o tēnei whare, te tari o Design Club.
Ngā mihi nui ki a koe.
Ngā mihi.
O tira kia koutou.
Ka huri ki te ina mata, ki te taha o te Grani Pāpā, te kura, paratine te ripi. Ka heke mai ko Wirimu Hongi te ripi. Ka heke mai ko Pere Wihongi. Ka heke mai anō ko Genere Pere Wihongi. Ka heke anō ko Pani Wihongi, tōku Grani Pāpā. I te taha o te Grani Māma, ko Kawati te Ruki te tangata, ka heke mai ko Maihi Kawati Paraone, ka heke anō ko Hirini Paraone, ka heke anō ko Rongo Paraone, ka heke anō ko Tia Paraone, te Grani Māma, no Opahi ia. So that places me within the landscape of Taitokura. My grandfather died when my father was very young, and at that point we became part of the diaspora, and our immediate family home has been in Tamaki Makaurau basically since that time. So yeah, I find myself in Tamaki Makaurau, apart from some time overseas growing up. So yeah. Ko Fuihongi tōku ingoa.
Kia ora, Phil. You've had a varied career to date. Tell us about your journey to where you are now in your role with the Auckland Design Office.
Yeah, varied is a good descriptor, right? So I started out as a roof tiler, which I'm very proud to claim actually, because I feel it gives me a practical bent to what I do. Spent quite a lot of time overseas chasing sport, as you do when you're younger. But I had a long career in the casino industry, which I combined with study to make a direction change later in life. I studied landscape architecture and planning, town planning. So I have been employed in and around that area since the early 2000s. In terms of the career, I've spent quite a long period of time working for private consultancy, environmental consultancy. I had 3.5 years working for a post-settlement iwi down in South Waikato for Raukawa Charitable Trust, which was a wonderful experience for me. And for the last 4 years, I've been working here in Tamaki Makaurau for the council. I'm part of a small Maori design team within Te Kanihera o Tamaki Makaurau. I'm very fortunate to work with some highly talented and committed individuals. One of our whanaunga, Olivia Haddon from Ngāti Wai, Ngāti Maruhiri. One of our interns from Whanganui, and another young intern from Tairāwhiti that we've just managed to place permanently within JASMAC. So, yeah.
I guess moving to the kaupapa of your kōrero today, I guess we could characterise the work that you do as contributing to, first of all, mana whenua well-being, the ability for mana whenua to see themselves appropriately and well represented in the landscape, whether that's through art, whether that's through architecture, urban design, landscape architecture. Can you tell us a bit more about, I guess, your philosophy, I guess, first of all, as a landscape architect, in terms of the role and importance of all those dimensions in our well-being?
I think that well, the role that I play now is focused entirely on Maori identity and well-being. In fact, that's where within our strategic documents at council, that's where the point of validity for our team and our kaupapa is. So it's firmly focused on that. Well-being you can read in a number of ways, but the identity piece, consistent with the majority of, consistent with Aotearoa in general, it's very difficult to find any visibility of Māori culture within Tamaki Makaurau. It's very challenging. And with that comes the challenges for identity. If your identity is not being reinforced through visibility in the built environment, then it's hard for you to see your place there. So that's one of the challenges. That's what we're trying to address through our work. As you say, it's working with architects, with landscape architects, with urban designers, with artists, with mana whenua in particular, trying to get to an essence of Tamaki Makaurau. One of the key drivers for our work is the notion of moving from Auckland to Tamaki Makaurau. It's not saying that we're trying to take it back to a point in, say, 1840, pre-treaty. That's not what the kaupapa is about. It's about trying to evolve into a contemporary city contemporary city and region that's firmly founded on its mana whenua groups. That mana is held by those groups, but it's located here in the South Pacific, looking strongly out into the world, very confidently. So that's what we're trying to achieve through our work streams.
Okay, well maybe Francis, we can put up our first slide. We've got a 7 or so slides that Phil's going to talk to, which help to give some visual cues to the varied work that Phil does here in Tamaki. So kia ora, Francis.
The first slide that I put up, one of the primary tools that we use through our work is the Te Aranga Māori design principles, which were developed back in 2012, coming out of a Te Aranga Maori Landscape cultural strategy, which was prepared in about 2006. Ro is a keen agent in the formulation of both those documents. So I just want to acknowledge your role and leadership in this space for a long period of time, Ro. The principles, there are a set of 7 outcome focused principles, which they provide a frame for conversation to develop within. It's not to say that they are the definitive kaupapa you should be discussing when you're entering into design discussions. They're more of a prompt. The first and catalyzing principle is that of mana. It is that the recognition of those groups who hold mana whenua in an area, and that's the key bit. Therein lies the authenticity, which the other principles can hang off. So the other principles are whakapapa. It's about respecting names, acknowledging names. It's about taiao. So the natural environment is acknowledged and cared for. Māori too, the environmental health and integrity is promoted. It's mahi toi, so it's about creative expression of narratives in place. The tohu, so it's linking design to the broader cultural landscape, markers within the cultural landscape. And the last one is the notion of ahika. And so that's about mana whenua, excuse me, mana whenua being able to occupy that space, being comfortable in that space, and to be there as a permanent basis. So yeah, that's that first slide. I'm just going to very quickly look at an example of one of the major pieces of work that we're doing at the moment in Auckland. So for those of you who are familiar with the waterfront, that's the ferry building down there. So we have a large program of work that's down in that area, rejigging the bottom end of town. So one of the projects in this is it's in the area that you can see on the image there. So it's an area that is on the edge of the harbour on the Waitemata and on the edge of the land on Quay Street. One of the things we tried to do with this program of work is to apply systems thinking, I guess, to design of the space. So we're trying to look at what are the natural ecologies of place, what are the social ecologies of place, but also to introduce the idea of cultural ecologies of place. So it's what are those constituent elements in a cultural sense that will allow for a healthy cultural ecological system. So it's things like obviously it's markers. So there's a number of designs of varying forms in there. In a carved form, there's there's a range of those. There's the language is visible. There's been name provided for the space in particular, which speaks to the intent of the space. Toi Ngāpuhi. It's a space that mana whenua want to have to be able to hold wānanga down there to talk about environmental matters, to be able to talk about that place in a space that's been designed for it. There's, if I go to the next slide, there's some things that we've been doing that are new here, which are very exciting, and they focus less on mahi toi and more on the Māori tū element. So one thing that we know, the Aranga tells us that the Waitemata, the mussel beds were prolific in the Waitemata, and they're not there anymore. So what we've done with this, what we're doing with this is we're bringing mussels, bringing kutai back to the heart of the city to help with the remediation of water quality, which is a critical, it's a major, I guess, something that needs addressing within our urban area. So effectively what we're doing is we're bringing marine ecology back into our design work to employ natural systems. If you go to the next one, right. So here's an image of, we recently put the first of the lines of mussels in, and here is them going in. Here is the mana whenua groups that we've been working with are involved in every single element of this design process. There's a design partnership that we've had with mana whenua that's giving us different outcomes to what we've had before. But again, if we look at those, the basis has been the Te Aranga principles. And if we think about that ahika principle, what we've had particular focus on that principle in this program of works. So through design, through involvement, but through commercial opportunities as well, through procurement and the works that we're doing, that mana whenua presence is very strong. It's much stronger than we've managed to do before. So yeah, I guess that's an example of some of the work that's going down there.
Just contrasting that work with what's been done on the comprehensive work on the Wellington waterfront. We've got all the work that Rates did there, and probably a couple of Ks of accessible waterfront, which has kind of been naturalised in various ways. Are there any cues that you took from what's happened in Wellington?
I guess the use of the terrestrial ecology that we're using here is definitely helping with the remediation, similar to what Rates is doing, although it's in a where we've been working lately is in a much more condensed sort of space, so it's much harder. But yeah, we're using natural ecologies to help deal with the problems that we're generating through our urban form. It's a key part of what we're doing. So.
Yeah, so I think if we look at this example as a significant cultural presence, which may not be immediately recognisable to overseas tourists, they will see and get a very strong ecological focus there. But I guess in this particular example, it's really around what priorities that mana whenua have and identifying them and then bringing them to the fore. And spending considerable design and infrastructure resource on these type of projects.
Yeah, it's been a big learning process that we've been through with this program of works. But one of the things that's one of the real benefits that we've had, quite apart from the increased visibility of cultural identity, is the effect that it's had on our major design firms who have been undertaking the work. The uplift in consciousness it's tangible. So it's about growing that resource as well, recognising that we have a shortage of Māori practitioners and mana whenua in particular working in these design fields. So it's trying to be clever about training the firms up to recognise the potentials of working closely with mana whenua to, I guess, thicken up the authenticity of places. That's what they're looking for. So,
in terms of your next slide, do you want to carry on, or do you want to talk to some other issues associated with this particular project?
I think we might go through into the next one. So this is just another initiative that we've through our work program that we've done. So just trying to understand, I guess, what those visible markers of identity are within the central city here in Auckland. We undertook a baseline study of artworks, mahi toi, within the central city and waterfront area. So very strong on using getting an evidential basis for our works. So understanding the landscape before you start making interventions is a key part of what we do. So initially this came out of a baseline study of what we have in the city, and it's morphed into the booklet that we have here, which is morphed into an app and a downloadable app, which allows you to through your devices to follow these in the landscape, which is morphed into tours, virtual tours, which is then morphed into guided tours. So there's a whole range of things that have come out of a very simple exercise that we undertook. But what it's doing is it's showing us where those markers of culture are within our urban form in the central city, and it's quite remarkable. It's you know parts of the city, but you don't know all of the city. So to have a comprehensive overview and to see the quality of the artworks and the artists that are represented in our urban realm is remarkable. It's wonderful. So it's been wildly successful. We are just coming to the end of our second printing of 10,000 books. Tourists, locals, museums, galleries. It's been a very successful piece of work.
I guess what this example brings up is the notion of overt works of cultural identity versus more subtle examples, and of course the guidebook really helps people to navigate and find those those gems, which may be not in very prominent places sometimes. And I guess that's the overarching question is having a guidebook is really important to map what we've got and promote what we've got. But how do we make our cultural identity, our mana whenua identity, much more visible in the day-to-day lives of mana whenua, of course, in the first instance, Mātā Waka, Tauiwi, and of course our manuhiri.
One of the other things concepts we're working with at work is the notion of cultural infrastructure for a city. So it's what are the big pieces that you need to have in place where culture is flourishing to assist with exactly what you're talking about. So there are places where Māori are on a daily basis, life is there, and once you start getting life around those key pieces of infrastructure, then you'll get the bubble out effect that's coming off those. So that's what we're looking towards. The reo is becoming much more present within the built environment in Auckland. So that's a key thing that is helping to normalise the reo and to make that the identity more visible. I think that because we've been through such a big run of development in the city, there's a wide range of opportunities, and we're starting to see those come through now through public development in particular, but through private development as well. So yeah, there's a much more tangible face coming. I think one of the key things that I think we need to be doing is there's a kōrero that comes from one of my ancestors, Kawati, that I particularly like. Wareware au I ngā kupu Māori. But effectively it's about let he who makes the net set it and then pull it in. So to me what that talks about is us needing to be particularly strategic in the view. Documents like the strategy are a key part of that. So it's having a vision of where we're going. Then it's building the bits that are around that to enable it to occur. Relationships are a key one. My time down with Raukawa in South Waikato, post-settlement iwi situation, while I was down there, we were negotiating the joint management agreements with all of the local councils. The key to those things is to make sure you get your hooks in there. The hooks can be quite subtle, but it's getting them in there. The other thing is through Crown agencies, through settlement processes. I know there's a number of iwi in the north that have already settled, but not all have. So there's a whole range of opportunities that are there. So within those accords with the Crown agencies, there's lots of opportunity in there to put the hooks in. Every one of those Crown accords has an implementation planning. So there's the opportunity to get those things, projects up and running. So I think that's a real key part of it. Working with local government also, the opportunities are there. Although local government is it's an interesting place to be working and it's difficult. My belief is that it's actually an enabling. Local government should be enabling for its communities. So being able to work with local government at a strategic level in particular to make sure you get things in at that level. There's always pockets of energy within those local government agencies where you'll find people in there who are committed to delivering kaupapa, finding where those people are, looking after those people and working with them. So yeah, those are just some of the ways through my learnings. Another key thing I would say is having people on the inside. I think that's a really important thing, and sometimes those roles can be really hard. So I would say that if you have whanaunga who are in those roles, look after them. It's hard ground they're holding for everyone.
Yes, as a mātāwaka person in a mana whenua space here in Tāmaki, you know, I think
Depends who you're talking to.
Depends who you're talking to, yeah. So yeah, we've got various definitions of te tai tokerau and where it begins and ends, and where Ngāpuhi begins and ends as well. But we won't go there now. But you know, acknowledging 19 acknowledged iwi groupings in Tāmaki. I do work elsewhere in the country, and they just wonder how anything happens when you've got 19 iwi groupings with lots of overlapping interests. Tell us about that space and how you've, you know, helped to navigate some of those tensions.
It is particularly difficult ground to have come from working inside an iwi organisation, which has a huge takiwa, and it's acknowledged as having that takiwa, and there's very little overlap. So you know, that was a dream. But it's challenging up here, definitely with the 19. I think one of the key things for me is that making sure that the kaupapa is good, making sure that you know what it is you're trying to achieve, and making sure you're taking people with the kaupapa at all times. That's, for me, that's what's worked, is where you vest the mana in the kaupapa, and that's the most important thing. So everything that you do, all your work is on that, and being very open and obvious with that that's what you're there for. You're there to serve the kaupapa, you're there to serve those people, and you're there for the betterment. So that's what I've found has worked for me.
And taking that Toi Māori guidebook and app example for Tāmaki, and what opportunities do you see for a similar approach in Te Tai Tokerau?
Well, I can see that there's one of the things I constantly marvel at, and I mean no disrespect, but to see that one of the key pieces of tourism infrastructure that people go to in Tai Tokerau is the wharepaku and kawakawa, the hontavasa, and I'm just gobsmacked that's what it is. That's what's getting promoted. So I think that, as I said, one of the key things that came out of that booklet and everything else that followed on from it was understanding what was there. So I think that a piece of work may be similar to what we've done here. It's not to say that that's the be all and end all, but it's a vehicle that will allow us to have a look at what we have in place currently. Knowing what we have in place, where we have it, then we can start looking at things from a strategic point of view. So where are the interventions? So you look at gateways. Gateways are always a really good thing to be starting with. So where are those points of entry where you're getting people coming in? Where are those points of transition in the landscape between various takiwa, between iwi? Where are those things? How do we celebrate those things? There's a range, but it's knowing in the first place what it is that we've got.
Yeah, so yeah, having a baseline and being able to, I guess, recognise the qualities of those pieces that have been, you know, selected to sit in that guidebook, I guess is important in terms of moving ahead, and as to the quality of work that you want to see coming through in the cultural landscape. And of course, Ngāpuhi, pre-settlement, several other iwi in the north, pre-settlement as well. How can pre-settlement iwi move these kaupapa along, acknowledging that they don't have the resources, often don't have the hooks, as you say, in place in terms of the government agencies, and often don't have strongly developed relationships with local government based on a settlement process?
I would say a group like Toi Ngāpuhi, groups, specialist groups like this, have a role to play in that, where they are resources that are of an area. They are practitioners who know the area, and so are able to stand and deliver outcomes on behalf of an area. So there's a convenience for local government to have that sort of facility. If you look at, two things just before we get off track. Your kōrero about quality, I think now's a really good time to start putting some metrics around quality to be able to understand what will make Toi Ngāpuhi. What is it that's really good about it? What is it that's unique about it? And actually having some metrics around it, I think, would be an extremely valuable thing to be thinking about right now. I don't have the answers as to how that can happen, but well, that's a beautiful kaupapa for wānanga. That would be a good one to be part of, definitely. These are just more of that booklet, right?
So, I guess the key thing that comes to mind is how we start to look at a pipeline of opportunities for our Ngāpuhi and Taitokoro Māori creatives. And we've seen the government in the post-COVID world trying to be more supportive of the arts, and they've released some funding associated with a school arts program by bringing artists into schools. So, if a pipeline is what we're after and a trickle is what we've got now, apart from, moving settlements along, what might be some tangible examples that Toi Ngāpuhi and local government could do to try and make much more, a much greater number of opportunities available to our creatives in Te Taitokoro?
I can't speak with authority to the local government situation up there because I haven't worked up there. What I can speak to down here, procurement is a great way of facilitating opportunities, and our procurement policies down here, we're shaping those at the moment to make sure that we are making those opportunities available to artists, Māori artists, and to mana whenua artists in particular. So procurement is a key way to do it. The other thing we were before I got sidetracked, we were talking about quality and mechanisms for that space between iwi, mana whenua, iwi, and the development sectors, public and private. There's two examples that we can point to that exist at the moment down in Ōtautahi. We have the Matapōpiri Charitable Trust, which came out of the Christchurch rebuild. It was, I think it was something that Sarah, what was it?
Yeah, Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah.
Yeah.
Sarah and Nai, two ahuriri, agreed to work on all of the major projects there. So in effect, what the Matapōpiri is, it's the intermediary between the iwi. So they're mandated by the iwi to provide cultural narratives, to provide direction and guidance for whether they're private developers or public developers. And you can see the benefits of having that agency from the work that's coming out. And there's a number of projects down there which are really starting to give a flavour, you know, to what was pretty bland,
pretty English. Yeah.
So so that's one model, but one that I was alerted to the other day was again in Kaitahu. It's Alkaha, which I understand is a number of the runaka that have joined down on the bottom of the island. So my understanding, and it's nascent, is that it operates in a similar way to Matapouri, but the other thing that they do is they have a resource management arm as well. So they get to see it's not just what comes to them through the cultural expression, but it's also the opportunities that come through resource consents. And you know, there's any number of ways that you can get opportunities through those. So those are two good models.
Yeah.
That I think would be beneficial to look towards in the north.
So in a way, with our 19 iwi groupings, in a sense, is your team's role a little bit of a Matapouri role almost on behalf of iwi?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. No, we don't. We at the end of the day, we are council officers, and we're charged with that. It's very clear the ground that we.
Yeah.
But in that, our role is to try and provide the maximum opportunity that we can.
Right.
For our Māori design kaupapa, and within that for mana whenua.
So you can leverage opportunities and guide the quality processes and quality outcomes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Big parts of our work are preparation of guidelines. It's mapping practice and ensuring that good practice is maintained. You know, the thing with our roles are that before our roles there were no roles like this, so it's been making it up on the fly. So we've been, again, in terms of ensuring that we have an evidential basis for our work, so we're quite clear in research sharing, you know, applying research, bringing research to what it is we're doing, but also documenting. All of the work that we do is available for sharing. So you know, it's none of it is kept. You know, we work with a number of local government around the motu, and yeah, we're open to sharing what we have, all our tools. We've also had the good fortune of working with local government and tangata whenua groups in Tol Auckland over in Canada. So we've travelled over there. So we stay in touch with a couple of Vancouver and Seattle as well. So we're able to maintain those connections, our Indigenous connections through that.
Yes, certainly. The era that we're living in, the Black Lives Matter movement and the toppling of statues and monuments around the world, and of course we've had some progress there in Hamilton in particular, which may also lead to a return to the original name of Hamilton. So can you speak to the issue of decolonising environments versus indigenizing environments?
Decolonising instead of indigenizing.
Yeah, I mean the Black Lives Matter and the removal of statues is really a decolonising kaupapa. You know, get rid of the rogues, take them away, chuck them in the canal, put them in the museum maybe. That's one dimension, of course, and then the other dimension is what we've been talking about. Can you talk about that duality there, or any thoughts you have on the duality, and of course, how much energy we should be spending on the decolonisation process versus the indigenizing process?
I think it's trying to. Some of the kōrero that is coming out about balance, trying to find balance, or trying to find fullness of histories. as we know, history is it's written by those who hold the pen, hold the sword, hold the whatever. So part of the recalibration and part of the balancing, I think, is that's my belief. History is history, warts and all. Let's not hide from it. Let's acknowledge it in a way that allows us to keep it there, but to move from that point. So personally, the option of moving things into a museum, I don't think it's a bad one. So then you can have the fullness of your conversation in there instead of it just being the figure of dominance that statues exist as out in the public realm.
The trouble is, of course, our Maori curators say, no, we don't want those colonial rogues. So you know, realistically, you would have to create new space.
New space.
New space.
It's yeah. I mean the Lord Auckland is a good example. He's so he never came here. He was a benefactor of Hobson, as I understand. He never even came out here, but he got, similar to Hamilton, he got the city named after him. There's always been a statue outside the old civic administration building in town. It's gone now, and I don't know where it's gone, but it kind of feels good that it has gone. We're not tied to that anymore, and that moving from Auckland to Tamaki Makaurau. Yeah.
And that was second-hand anyway. That it came from India. The Indians didn't want the statue because he had a very dodgy record over there.
Yeah.
So we got it second-hand, and I think you're right. It's good that it's not too visible because it may not be very safe in the current context. If we think about just a little bit more on that kaupapa, if we had an environment which was rich with mana whenua cultural works, you know, ancient works, modern works, etc., do you think we would be as concerned about these colonial monuments?
No, I don't think we would. I don't think we would at all. One of the things that we, it's always trying to, how do you measure what success looks like in the work that we're doing? And one of the things that we've landed on, which is obviously impossible, but it's for reaching back into time. And in Tamaki Makaurau, it's bringing, if you could reach back in time and grab Apihai to Kaua and to get the fellow to take a walk through the centre of town, despite the fact that it's the concrete jungle and it's going to be nothing like the one he knew, there would be enough elements within the modern city, a progressive modern Tamaki Makaurau, that he would be able to see himself and identify clearly and know, oh, this is my home. It's different, but it's my home. So those are markers. That is materiality. That is restoration of natural environments. That is language. It's all of those things.
And in Te Taitokiro, as in Tamaki, one of the few ways that we recognise ourselves in the landscape is actually with our pā tu wata, our fortified pā, and particularly, you know, where you and I are from in the mid-north there, with some striking examples. And we see those places, and we are reminded of the events of particularly the 1840s, and then, of course, earlier as well. But then, of course, we drive a bit deeper into the landscape, and then we see some similar pā sites covered in sheep and being grazed by cattle, and we see those terraces and ditches being progressively eroded. What are your thoughts there on protections for those sites which sit in private ownership?
One of the things that we did when I was working for the iwi in the South Waikato for Raukawa was we spoke about management of sites. So it wasn't about protection, it was about management. And the arbiters of what that management regime, which would differ from site to site, were those whose footprints were already there. So it was working with the old people in particular and understanding what they knew about the sites and what their aspirations were. Often we were able to work with the landowners, and those people are close to the ground. They're very close to the ground, so they're very pragmatic people. So it was things like getting agreements with landowners to exclude stock. It was things like only using light stock up there, so taking heavy stock away from them. So those were a couple of them, but it was about understanding your landscape and then designing your management regimes around what they are. So knowing what the values are and then planning for that.
And of course, there's an economic issue there. If a farmer's going to take, a PAR site out of production, which is the ideal situation, someone's got to theoretically reimburse that farmer.
But talking to the cockies that we did down there, when they realised what those things what those PAR actually meant, they're difficult. The nature of them, they're defensive positions, so they're not meant to be easy to work on or walk on. So in a lot of ways, there wasn't much taken out of their usable areas. So
that's obviously it's something that Ngāpuhi and other iwi in the north could engage with pre-settlement. You don't have to be settled to make that a priority, and we've certainly got so many good examples.
Just talking about those PAR sites as being visible markers, there's a convenience, and there's something that's really good about that. But the bit of the story that we need to understand is, so again, going back to that notion of cultural infrastructure, the PAR is a PAR. So what is the rest of the settlement around that PAR? So it's being able to understand where your resources were, where the settlement sites were, what people were doing in those sites. Being able to understand those sites in a landscape perspective then provides you with much richer understanding of it. It also provides you with the ability to design resource management around it as well. So how you should be running land, what you should be trying to preserve and protect and manage.
Cool. There's a question come through from Chris Graham, and he's just asking if you can unpack the terminology around metrics, and that I guess that applies to if we're going to map the Taitokerau cultural artworks, which we think are worthy of being acknowledged and promoted. That term metrics, what do you mean by that?
I think so. What, in terms of the expression, so it's to me it's I'm thinking deeply here. To me, the metrics are so what are the narratives? Do those people does that artist who's telling that story have the right to be able to tell that narrative? Is that person that's telling that narrative supported by those who hold that narrative? Is the work that's being provided, does it have characteristics, qualities that reflect that narrative? One way that you can look at it, and the way public art works in town is you have marquee artworks, the big really valuable commissions, and then you have smaller ones. So the number of marquee type commissions is very low. So what they try to do is they try to get artists who are at the top of their game. Right. So they're looking for international artists, artists with track record, that sort of thing. Coming down on that, then you have the lower sort of valued commissions, if you like, are the ones where you can grow your resource to get to that point. But all of those artists who get those key commissions, there's a track record that people are able to look at and able to ascertain, you know, the quality of their work. So that's kind of what I mean by metrics. The only people I would say that are qualified will come from artists who work in that realm anyway. So again, it's a beautiful wānanga right there. And yeah, it's one to look forward to. But I think the opportunity is for Ngāpuhi to actually tackle that. There's that thing about being close to the ground. We can get Māori responses anywhere, and they apply as markers of cultural identity. A Māori response, if it's Māori, clearly. But if what we're trying to do is we're trying to get a richness of place and expression and narrative, then we need to be getting closer to the ground with that. So we don't want to see, you know, if what we're trying to do is to develop Toi Ngāpuhi, then is the right thing to be doing to be putting a generic puhoro motif on something. And what is it about this place? That's what we need to be doing.
Just I guess one of our concluding questions is really around accepting that there is a natural hapu loyalty to want to provide opportunities for their local exponent. They may not be regionally recognised, they may not be nationally recognised, or certainly not internationally recognised, but they are they're acknowledged as having some ability within the hapu realm, and having some ability to speak to that hapu identity. And we have this tension with from a procurement perspective with council budgets and other agencies saying, well, this person must be nationally recognised, and Hono down the road, he's not nationally recognised. Can you talk about that tension?
Yeah, that's something that plays out. So one way that that can be addressed is to kind of buddy, if you like. So you have a tuakana teina sort of relationship, and it requires a letting go from both sides to be able to do that. But with the understanding being that at the completion, so the local artist, if you like, is the one that gains through the experience of that commission and through that established artist. And so the thing is that you can facilitate these sorts of things, but the next time that person's equipped, ready to go. Sure. So it's part of that growing the resource in a conscious way. And again, as councils can be extremely enabling to be able to do that sort of thing, to grow the resource, know what it is you're trying to do, and work towards that.
There's also this issue of the tohunga, and we have it in the Pacific, and we have it here as well, that the tohunga was often someone who came from outside. They were, their reputation grew and was heard throughout the area, and this tohunga was invited in to perform a particular role, often across iwi boundaries as well. And so we've got a similar tension with some people wanting to bring in a nationally recognised Maori exponent versus, again, Hono down the road. Any thoughts there on this traditional notion of tohunga being procured from outside very often versus loyalty to our local artists and wanting to give opportunities to our local artists who are perhaps struggling a bit more than this national artist?
Yeah, again, I go back to that. So it's that, by all means, commission that work, but carry with you, take those opportunities. If people want to use those tohunga, as you're saying, from out of the area, then that's the choice of those people. But to maximise the opportunity coming out from the opportunity to learn, That's the key part of it.
And I guess, and at the moment we reflect on this trickle that's flowing through our big pipeline, and I guess these issues are more sensitive when there's only a trickle of work, and I guess we're all trying to look toward this new reality where there's that pipeline is full of opportunities for the national, for the local, for the international artists. Just reflecting on that gushing pipeline, what do you think the future holds for the Ngāpuhi creatives and creativity across Te Tai Tokerau?
I have great aspirations. I mean, the paucity that exists now needs to be addressed. It does need to be addressed. There's no two ways about it. Opportunities will come through settlement. Very clearly, they'll come through settlement. It's a long game. It is the long game we're playing. The piece of advice I got from a karawa down in Raukawa was hurry up slowly. And that's what it is. But again, I get back to my kōrero about weave the net, set it, and you'll catch the fish. Yeah.
Tēnā koe Phil, ngā mihi nui kia koe. Nau i whakaatu wetahi o tō mahi ki tāmaki makaurau. Nau i kōrero pāna o mahi ki Ngāti Raukawa, me wera atu kōrero pāna. Toi Māori ki tāmaki nei. Ngā mihi nui kia koe. Thank you, Phil. Thank you for sharing your time with us today. He wānanga ki te haere. Kei a koe matua, Bernard.
Tēnā kaurua, tēnā hoki koe e Phil, kaurua tahi e te tuakana e rau. Phil, thank you for sharing your insights today. I also thank you for your perseverance with our technical issues at the beginning of proceedings, and also to all people who are watching and listening. I suppose this opportunity to have a platform, a webinar series came about because when the world was thrown into the disarray with the COVID-19 virus, we had hoped to have a summit highlighting artistry particular to Te Tai Tokerau and creatives from Te Tai Tokerau. That was an event that we had to postpone and look at other methods. And so the webinar that we've had today with you, Phil, has been an opportunity to investigate new technology and presenting information in a new way. So thank you very much. Also, thank you for the insights into the challenges, I suppose, of reconciling our indigeneity, and also with the reconciliation, I suppose, of what my tupuna Paora Tuhaira said in Tāmaki, ka whiwhi ngātahi, ngā iwi e rua nei te Pākehā me te Māori ki te pai. How do we work together in order to set the net and we weave it to begin with, set it, and then to draw in the harvest. Look forward to that in the coming time, and thank you, Ro, for today's insight. I definitely think that we will have some comments, and I encourage everybody that's listening and watching to share comments to Toi Ngāpuhi, and look forward to the next event, which will be this Sunday, this coming week, and of course will be an interview with Graham Tipene concerning his perspective as a Tuhunga Tāmoko, and also someone who wears moko mataora. So we look forward to that. Hoina no e te tuakana e Phil, tēnā hoki koe. Kaurua tahi e rau. Uri noa kia koutou i ngā kai mā taki ngā kai hakarongo. puta noa o te taitokerau, o tira puta noa I te nukuroa o Aotearoa. O reira kia tau no ngā manakitanga o ngā whainga I te wahi ngaro kia koutou makatoa tēnā koutou kia ora hui hui mai anō la koutou katoa. I te pū kōrero, I te pū wana. Tō manua ko tōku manua ka irihia. Wakatū tā rewa ki te rangi au eke a eke panuku, eke tangoroa. Whano mai te toki, aumi hui tai ki Tēnā koutou.